Welcome back, everyone. This is me again, back with chapter 5. So, thank you to anybody who's listening. And here we go. Chapter 5 The Sorting. The Great Hall was a magnificent place if you asked Rollie, though no one did. He'd read about it in Hogwarts history, and it didn't disappoint at all. It was a wonder. Thousands of candles floated in mid-air, lighting the place. The teacher sat at a long table up front, and the singing hat was on a stool right before that table. The four houses each had their own table, and it was clear with the colours who was who. "I can't believe all we have to do is try on a hat. I'll kill Fred. He said we had to wrestle a troll," Ron exclaimed, and Rollie laughed out loud. Professor McGonagall came forward with a long roll of parchment. "When I call your name, you'll come forward. I'll place the hat on your head for sorting. Abbott, Hannah?" And that was how it started and went along as follows. Hannah got into Hufflepuff. So did Susan Bones, Ernest Macmillan, Justin Finch Fletchley, girls named Leanne and Megan, and finally Wayne Hopkins. Terry Boot was the first to Ravenclaw, followed by Michael Corner, Anthony Goldstein, Sue Lee, Mandy Brocklehurst, Padma Patil, and Lisa Turpin. For Gryffindor, the first in was Lavender Brown, then Faye Dunbar, Seamus Finnegan, a girl named Keela, Pavati Patil, Dean Thomas, and Ronald Weasley. Slytherin was Millicent Bulstrode, Vincent Crabbe, Tracy Davis, Gregory Goyle, Daphne Greengrass, Draco Malfoy, Theodore Knott, Pansy Parkinson, and that black boy they noticed in Draco's boat, Blaze Zabini. Draco and Ron's sorting went by very fast. The hat was barely on his head before they were sorted. They obviously had long decided what they'd be. It took a bit more time for the core three. Hermione was up first of them, and the hat took about 3 minutes before it called out Ravenclaw. She bounced up and eyed Rollie before taking a seat. Neville took a bit longer than Hermione. He seemed to be arguing with the hat. It finally called Hufflepuff. The last of the group was Rollie. "Ah, Mr. Vita. Difficult. Very difficult. Secret, Mr. Potter. You'd be good in any house, really. You have all the traits and seemingly can get along with everyone, or fake it very well." He gripped the edge of the stool. "I wouldn't like anyone to know I'm Harry Potter, and since I'm very much up on books and am close friends with Hermione, I'd like to go to Ravenclaw, please." "If you're sure, better be a Ravenclaw," Hermione squealed in joy. Rollie shook hands with all the other claws that had sat down and introduced himself, ending with a hug from Hermione. "This is wonderful, Rollie. I was so scared we'd be separated," she sighed in relief. "You needn't have worried, my friend. You're stuck with me." He laughed good-naturedly. As the sorting was over, the headmaster rose and welcomed all the new students. He said some funny words, and the feast appeared. Rollie was much hungrier than he thought, and tucked in, not forgetting his manners. He got to know Terry some, and Padma. He mostly let Hermione do the talking for them as he ate. She couldn't contain her excitement. "I can't wait for classes. I'll write out a study schedule for us, Roll." He nodded and just smiled enthusiastically. "Wow, Hermione, I've never seen anyone so excited," Padma chimed in, knowing if she stuck with this girl and Rollie, she'd be one of the top students in their year, but probably not first. "Don't forget to put in time for exercise. I promised my mums I'd keep my exercise regimen up. I have to practice my martial arts running, and we have to really get going on trying more advanced spells." "Oh, are you guys Muggle-born?" The two nodded. The pair already answered as one, and everyone could already tell it wouldn't be wise to try and separate them. Hermione also knew they had a second one to practice with as well, to see which was best for what kind of magic. They learned from the wand law books they both had some good for dark arts, which they wouldn't shy away from. No point in being at a disadvantage. Riley didn't know why, but he always thought about preparing for the worst scenario. Perhaps because his parents were murdered and no one really knew what happened. Maybe whatever that was about wasn't over, and he promised to protect his mums. Even though he was a young boy, magic would be his way, aside from martial arts, to protect them the best. He also had his new friend to protect, even though he was sure she'd be as good if not better than him at magic, and was growing quickly with physical stuff. Raleigh's scar started to sting, and he looked over at the head table and noticed a sour, greasy-looking man looking at him. "Terry, who's that teacher talking to the professor in the turban?" "Oh, that's Professor Snape. He teaches potions, and he's head of Slytherin House. But Penelope says he fancies dark arts. The guy in the turban is Professor Quirrell. He teaches defense. Along the line that is Flitwick for charms, also our head of house. Professor Sinistra, astronomy. Professor Trelawney, divination. Sprout for herbology. She's also head of Hufflepuff. And Professor McGonagall, head of Gryffindor, and she teaches transfiguration." "Wow, Terry, you have it all locked down." Rollie was impressed. "It's my business to know things, Mr. Vita," he replied jokingly, but the ponytail boy didn't doubt it. "We're going to have a tough time being the best, Rollie. I know we can do it," Hermione said confidently. Dumbledore got everyone's attention for the rest of his announcements. "A few more words, now that we have all been fed. First years, please note the dark forest is forbidden to all pupils. Some older students should be reminded as well." He glanced over to the Gryffindor table. "Mr. Filch also would like to remind you there is no magic in the corridors between classes. Quidditch trials are in 2 weeks. Interested parties, talk to Madam Hooch. Finally, the 3rd floor on the right side is strictly prohibited, unless you'd like to suffer a horrible death." Hermione and Rollie gasped. "Is he serious?" The Claws nodded, and a few mumbled, "Must be." Dumbledore announced the singing of the school song. They knew the words from Hogwarts history, but didn't know the tune, though it seemed everyone sang their own way. Dumbledore was particularly fond of all music. The Ravenclaw first years followed Penelope Clearwater out to the Great Hall and up the marble staircase. As he passed some people, Rollie waved at Draco, Ron, and Neville before they lost sight of them. Their common room was in the opposite tower of Gryffindor. They each had a private small room and floors separated by year. Rollie appreciated the privacy for nighttime. He set up his trunk for easy access and stairs to his wardrobe and library. He sat at a desk and a chair in the library compartment and wrote a quick note to the boys, all similar. "Hey, if you'd like to study or eat lunch together, let me know. I've learned we don't have to sit at our own table after we get our lesson plans tomorrow. Hermione and I will have an assigned table in the library toward the back, and I'm asking the professor in the morning about a room we can practice spells in. Let me know your interest in joining. Separate houses don't mean we can't be friends. I look forward to hearing from you, Rollie." Then he wrote to his mums. "Dear Mums, I miss you so much. It hurt a little, but everything here has been very exciting. I was sorted into Ravenclaw. The hat says I could have went to any house. I agree with that. Well, I'd be set into a couple of traits. Ravenclaws are said to have a ready mind for those of wit and learning. We are determined to be the best for sure. I know we can talk via portkey, which I am about to activate now, but I thought it'd be fun to practice my penmanship and letter writing too. I love you both more than anything, and even though I'm on this new adventure, you are constantly in my thoughts and heart. Have fun while I'm away and think of me, please. I love you, Rollie." He then prepared for the bed and cleaned up and lay down and touched his portkey. He said mums and then activated so he could speak to them. The two picked up their side, also ready for bed. "Hello, you guys. I arrived alive." "Oh, honey, it is so good to hear your voice. It was much harder than we thought it would be at home without you, especially at night, without our goodnight kiss. We miss you so much." "Absolutely missing you so," Allison chimed in. "Yeah, I was just writing a letter saying just that. I decided to keep in contact with you always possible, so we can help with some of the distance." "How's it going, baby?" Allison asked. "Excellent, really. I met up with Draco again. He got sorted into Slytherin as he thought. Hermione got her Ravenclaw house. All about smarts. I probably just followed her." Rollie chuckled. "I met a few new friends. Neville, Ron, Terry, and Padma. Terry and Padma are in my house. Neville got Hufflepuff, and Ron is in Gryffindor, so I've got someone in all the houses. There seems to be a split. I'm going to work on getting everyone to be close no matter what house we're in. I'm glad to be in the same with Hermione, though. Everyone seems really smart and engaged, so I know it'll be tough but fun. Hermione's writing out a schedule for us to keep, so we can do it all. I'll make sure we include fun. I love you, Mum, so much." "We love you too, dear. Glad everything is going so well and the adjustment isn't too rough. I think I'll be really busy and I'll keep my mind occupied some. I'll let you know about my progress on video communications. They have pictures that move here. So I don't think there'll be that difficult of a transition to turn this portkey communication into a video format. My head of house is a charms teacher, so I'll get help from him on at least what books I can read. Okay, Rollie. Don't work too hard, okay? And yes, schedule in fun and relaxation. You should get to bed. Your first day tomorrow. I know you're excited. So excited, not as much as Hermione, but she has enough for us all, he smiled. Night, night, dear. Both his mums chimed harmonically. Good night, mums. Sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. They all smiled and felt warmer after speaking. The Vitas knew it was all okay, and they'd get used to the separation, and Rollie would kill himself figuring out how to video chat. He hid his portkey necklace back under his nightshirt and tucked himself in, saying goodnight to Hedwig. He'd be up early for his run with Hermione and breakfast. No whispers followed Rollie as he and Hermione left the common room, probably because no one in their right mind was up at 5 in the morning. He'd imagined that a few people would be awake right now if they knew he was Harry Potter, just to try to get a glimpse of him. They went up to the owlery to send letters off to their friends in other houses, Draco, Ron, and Neville. Rollie used Hedwig to take the letters to his mums and make them feel less like he was gone. The two ran back down to the grounds and decided they'd do their run around the lake until it got too cold, or figure out warming charms by then and still go that way. They ran for an hour and chatted. Hermione had worked up enough stamina to have an easy conversation at a jog. They went to their separate side in Ravenclaw to shower and change and met back up in the common room, making it to breakfast by 7:30. Hermione had worked on 2 timetables last night, leaving areas for classes as they get their schedule this morning at breakfast. They went to the respective side in Ravenclaw to shower and change and met back in the common room, making it to breakfast by 7:30. Hermione had worked on 2 timetables last night, leaving areas for classes as they get their schedules this morning at breakfast. The professor was already there and a couple more Ravenclaw older years. None of the other houses had come yet, and they started to roll in about 8. Very nicely done, Hermione. This leaves us plenty of room to relax some, which is very important, I promise, my mums. Yes, we have to give our minds a break to best retain. As you taught me, balance is very important. With your organization and my memory, there should be plenty of time to get our homework done and study. We are also very far ahead, I think. How is your meditation and occlumency going? Well, I think. The same for you? Hermione nodded. Yes. I can test your shields tonight if you like, which will in turn test my abilities. We'll see how far along we are, and when we may be able to switch. What would you like to practice besides that? Let me ask the professor. Rollie stood and went up to Professor Flitwick, who'd introduced himself the night before. Good morning, Professor. Hermione and I and some friends would like a safe place to practice spells, since we can't really in the common room and it's against the rules in the hall outside of the classroom. Can you offer any suggestions, sir? My, Mr. Vita, you haven't learned any in class yet? Right, but we read ahead quite a bit and we like to get our hands dirty, be practical as well, so we don't want to just study the movements and we want to build our capabilities as fast as possible. How else will we be the best? Of course, that is quite impressive, young man. I can set up a class and offer some supervision on certain days, and after you get your timetable, I can see what works best for us all. Rollie nodded. Excellent, thank you, sir. Flitwick just shook his head in amusement. None of his clothes had ever been this enthusiastic before classes even started. But he only saw it as a good thing. He sat back next to Hermione at the Ravenclaw table, and they had a little breakfast. Once everyone arrived, the professor handed out their year's timetables. The first years had the following schedule. Hermione added in when they do homework and study. I set this table up in the text of the blog so you could see rather than me reading it off to you. Hermione had set the exercise time from 5 in the morning through 6:30, Monday through Saturday, except the day for astronomy. Breakfast from 7 until heading off to their first class and pre-study if necessary. Then they plan for after breakfast on Saturday through noon for additional homework and study time. The rest of Saturday and Sunday was all leisure time, or time for them to work on a project they wanted to pursue, such as Rollie's soon invention into creating a video or hologram communication with his parents. The boys took them up on their offer to study together, including Crabbe and Goyle, who followed Malfoy around like puppies. Padma decided to join, and Terry and Lisa. Every morning, the breakfast table at Ravenclaw had Rollie, Hermione, Padma, Lisa, Terry, Neville, Ron, usually a little late, Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle, all studying and helping each other and eating together. The same group also spent the evenings in the private long table in the back of the library doing the same thing. They spent lunch at their own table and made it a point to have fun together on the weekend, usually Sunday. The schedule helped them to keep up with their homework as it came and to really hone on their skills. Professor Flitwick supervised them twice a week Tuesday evening since they were staying up for astronomy anyway. Even with all this, Rollie wanted to find an unsupervised place and time to get together to continue to practice more. He didn't want everyone to know all the stuff they worked on, so the group met in another classroom Sundays after lunch for a couple hours. They continued to search for less conspicuous places. Draco called it Rollie's Slytherin side, the being sneaky and hold their cards close. The supergroup was the best in their year, with Rollie and Hermione switching between first and second often. Draco and surprisingly Neville would switch between third and fourth throughout the year, followed by Padma, Terry, Lisa, Ron, then Crabbe and Goyle. But they were still the top group of the school for their year, and it wasn't a surprise when they started doing second-year material before even the Christmas holidays. More interestingly is that people seem to forget that Harry Potter hadn't showed up to Hogwarts this year, as he was supposed to. Well, the students did. Albus Dumbledore certainly did not. He was sweating about it with worry. It had been 6 years since he had lost track of them. His tracking instrument stopped working one day when he was out, and by the time he noticed, it had been a few months. He couldn't trace where the boy had gone, but obviously he didn't live with the Dursleys any longer. Dumbledore did confront them and scan their minds, wouldn't even speak about the boy. They were arrested for abuse, so didn't know what happened to him. They of course assumed he was placed in an orphanage. Dumbledore just hadn't spent enough time in the Muggle world to navigate their systems very well. Over time, he stopped worrying about it, assuming that Harry would show up at Hogwarts when it was time. But the letter didn't even go out to Harry. Either that meant he was dead, or he'd changed his name, or never really identified as Harry Potter. The letters were auto-printed to the kids' legal names, even according to the Muggle world, if there were those records. He could ask Gringotts if his vault was active, seeing as he was his magical guardian, but they just told him he no longer was, and gave no other information on it, frustrating the older man. He could deduce from the little bit of activity that one of the kids that came to the school this year must be Harry. There's quite a few Muggleborns in the year, which he assumed he'd come as since he was in the Muggle world when taken. He wasn't sure. He was leaning towards Rollie Vita, though. The boy's hair didn't match. Maybe if it was shorter it would, but his eyes screamed Lily to him. Rollie didn't have the scar, though. He didn't think a first year could cast a glamour to hide it. He'd keep an eye on Rollie. The boy had friends in all 4 houses and was exceedingly intelligent, but wasn't bothered by being beaten sometimes by the Muggle-born Hermione Granger. He was a Muggle-born himself, and it seems they were friends before arriving, according to McGonagall. He hadn't seen anyone muster support for all houses ever. Even Lord Voldemort, aka Tom Riddle, only gathered friends from Ravenclaw and Slytherin. Sure, he was only friends with one Hufflepuff, the number 1 Hufflepuff, and the number 1 Gryffindor and Ron Weasley. He was friendly with all the members of the houses of several years. He was very easygoing, confident, and kind. It didn't seem like a facade. He was obviously very rich as well from the way he dressed. The bearded man had seen the girl and him running most mornings. No magically raised children had that discipline. The two were a well-oiled machine, really, and complemented each other well and kept each other on their toes. Alice could tell they'd be together forever and could boast a large support from the students here. Hopefully they didn't have some malicious plans, though they were just children now. Extremely mature children, but 11 and 12 years old nonetheless. He wasn't too worried about them yet. Thank you for listening. That's the end of chapter 5. I have a bit of writing to do to revise some of chapter 6. We'll go more into their classes some, and maybe the troll situation in that chapter. So thank you anyone who's been listening. I appreciate it, and I hope you're enjoying. Till next time.